It's Carson Price from the Historic Wall Center. Welcome in Rob Williams, the editor-at-large of the Daily Hive and its Offside Sports Vertical, and Rob the Hockey Guy on Twitter. How are you?
Doing great, guys. How are you?
Good.
Do you have the holiday spirit yet, Rob?
You know what? We put up our Christmas tree earlier than ever. When I say we, my wife
Chelsea put up the Christmas tree.
Chelsea put up the Christmas tree. We had it up like mid-November, which is unheard of at our place. But so yeah, a little bit.
We are a mid-November Christmas tree family as well. And so far it's still standing with the two cats, so all things are good. We typically leave ours up till, March, some years April. Don't tell Jeff. I know he's big on Boxing Day, taking it all down. Okay. We'll start with the Surrey Mitsubishi poll question and then pivot to tickets at Rogers Arena. Have you been entertained by the Canucks this season, Rob?
I have when they've been on the road. I think that's the problem is they've got 4 wins in 14 games at home this season. They're the 4th worst home team in the NHL, and you look at the teams below them, like Buffalo, Anaheim, Chicago. Like these are terrible teams. So it's been a weird year that way because they've been such a good road team. But for the home fans, like they haven't had those. I think you get those great moments when you do it at home, when you get the reaction of players when the crowd's going wild. And we've seen, those have been few and far between for the Canucks this season. And I was in the press box on Tuesday, and they're trailing in the third period, and I'm going. I think I leaned over to Farhan Lalji next to me, and I said, like, "Oh God, I don't want to have another post game where the questions are just like, why, what is it about, playing at home? Like, why haven't you been able to win at home?" Because it's just like, it's been like that for too many times this season, which is unfortunate.
It's
so you're voting periodically. It's yes, no, periodically. You're voting periodically.
Well, compared to last year, they're nowhere near what they were last year. I mean, that was such an unreal year last year. Remember what a dream start they had, and how exciting and all the goals.
But all these discussions were happening in February, though. Remember?
This time last year was
glorious.
It was incredible.
But by the end of February, we're like, why are they so boring all of a sudden? So. Yeah. So, like, do you buy in that it's personnel related? Because he was playing like this last year, and they had different personnel. Is it still just not the right personnel for Rick Tocchet to have his cake and eat it too? That is defensively and offensively.
Well, I mean, I would like to see the full team kind of put together and see what they look like there. I mean, what the elephant in the room is the defense, right? Like that defense core is not good enough. Particularly with Hronek out, but they're missing probably one for sure, maybe 2 defensemen to be in kind of that, like they didn't really have a bona fide number 3. Maybe you had a number 4 on the team last year, arguably Myers or Susie or Cole or Zadorov at different points, but they had those 4 guys that kind of worked where they didn't have to lean on any one of them too much, whereas this season it's all relying on Susie and Myers because that third pair is just such a drop off from what they had last season. So what does this team look like with more capable defensemen, guys that can break the puck out of their zone more reliably? What do they look like there? Because the way it's gone this season, it's the Canucks. There's the Canucks when Quinn Hughes is on the ice, and then there's the Canucks with Quinn Hughes off the ice, and it's a drastic difference. And getting back to like, are you not entertained? Guys, Quinn Hughes wasn't the focus really of much chatter after last game. I thought he was absolutely sensational. Like he's just
crazy.
We're almost
taking him for granted, Rob.
Yeah, we're starting to take him for granted, maybe perhaps, but he is like he took a huge step, obviously last season winning the Norris Trophy. He's taken another step. Like he's better than he was last year. And that's incredible, incredible thing to say.
And we need your help on this because this one has taken to tweeting #Hughes for Heart. And I think that's something that we need to get behind because of the lack of exposure he gets with Eastern media and fans, given how late many of the Canucks games start. Like we spent the last couple of weeks talking to some of our regular guests about, do you think you'll get consideration? And not many are saying yes, and a lot of it say it's an exposure problem. That he's got a time zone problem as much as anything. But, when you talk about a judged most valuable to their team, as the
goodness.
NHL's Hart Trophy language specifies, my God, it is difficult to see anyone being more valuable to their team than Quinn Hughes is to the Vancouver Canucks. Not that voters have gone by that criteria, though. Therein lies the problem. We have turned most valuable into most outstanding, with many voters looking at who had the best season, which I can understand in some regards, because a judge most valuable to his team, it punishes players who are surrounded by good teammates. And for me, at least, it artificially inflates the candidacy of those who are not.
Yes and no.
Because I always use the example of Roberto Luongo in Florida.
Yeah.
When Roberto was in Florida, frankly, by the strict definition of the Hart Trophy, he should have been on every ballot, because it was Roberto stopping 30, 40 shots every night and keeping Florida in games, because they didn't have much offensive firepower or great players in his.
But you think about a star-studded forward set like in Colorado, and yet there's so much statistical evidence that shows what Nathan McKinnon does to that team when he is on the ice versus a Makar or even a Rantanen and all that sort of, like, McKinnon elevates everybody. So you can still make the arguments, I think, on star-studded and loaded teams. And I also don't buy, guys, that they've got the Norris Trophy. That's the forwards have got the Pearson, they've got the Art Ross. Like, there's alternative forward trophies as well. Like, everybody should be into the pool for the Hart.
Don't you guys think that defensemen are just kind of overlooked just in general for the Hart? Like, how often does a defenseman win the Hart Trophy? Like, you have to do everything and then some, and it has to maybe be a down year for scoring forwards for a defenseman to win the Hart Trophy. When you think about it, especially if you're talking about most valuable to your team, a defenseman that plays big minutes like Quinn Hughes does, there's very few forwards can affect the game like a defenseman, an all situations defenseman can. And, we probably should be giving the Hart Trophy to defensemen more regularly than we do. And I mean, you can say the same thing maybe to even more about goaltenders, where they, you got a great goaltender, that affects the game so much. I do think goaltending is different. Like, it's really hard to compare a goalie and compare a skater, but I do think that defensemen should get more consideration for the Hart Trophy probably every season.
Erik Karlsson's 100-point season got him 15th in Hart Trophy.
Well, to answer your question, do we overlook defensemen? Yes, because everybody involved in this conversation has seen precisely one defenseman win the Hart Trophy. That was Chris Pronger in 2000, because none of us go back to 1972. And Bobby Orr, the last goaltender to win it, Jose Theodore, the Montreal Canadiens in 01-02. That was kind of a contested, controversial result. Dominic Hasek won 2, and rightfully so. He was the best player in the league, particularly in the dead puck era. Like, you not only had to get through the Sabres trap, but you had to get through Dominic Hasek, and that had, for my money at least, he contributed to more victories than just about anyone else. Let me ask you on the entertainment value at Rogers Arena. How are you feeling about dump and chase hockey and Rick Tocchet hockey right now? Rob, how do you think the market feels about it?
Yeah, I mean, I still think the shine is still very much on Rick Tocchet. I think he's the fan base loves him. The media loves him as well, despite the discussion in the last couple of days here in the market. No, I mean, I think that we saw fire wagon hockey under Bruce Boudreau, where there was no attention to defense. That was infuriating to watch, as far as I'm concerned. No, I think the system that Rick Tocchet has them playing, I don't think is the problem. I think they need, as we were mentioning before, I think they need to improve their defense, have some better puck movers, and they need, Elias Pettersson should be able to produce in this system like other players are, and he is, he's scoring more, of course, of late. But I think there is another level that he can get to, and I don't think that that the system is to blame for Pettersson.
Okay,
just stop talking about PD, please.
What did he have for breakfast, Rob?
We're always asking.
What did he have for breakfast today? Can you get Noah on this beat, please? Okay. Rob, let's talk tickets. And actually, in response to our poll question today, got a note from Trevor who says, I'm really curious what ticket sales are like compared to expectations. Like, yeah, they've been ass at home, but prices are absurd also. We're part of the student program. We've been offered cheap tickets to every home game except for one, lower bowl for under $100. What's going on there on the ticket market at Rogers Arena for Canucks games?
Yeah, I snapped a photo 5 minutes into Tuesday's game and tossed it on Twitter with captioned it something to the effect of there's a lot of maroon in the crowd tonight, and there really was. Particularly behind, I would say the area that you always see, the most sparsely populated, I would say, for Canucks games when there are empty seats, is that lower bowl behind the net on the side that the Canucks shoot once at. That's usually the part that's very sparsely filled. And there were lots and lots of empty seats. Like there were some rows where there was like two people in the row. Like there was a ton of empty seats. I think you're seeing right now, I think some people responded to that as like that I'm trying to make Canucks fans look bad or something like that. Like for me, if there's empty seats, like this city loves this team. They're right into this team. If you're seeing empty seats, I think it's a result of the ticket prices being jacked up over the summer. Like they went way, way up. So high, in fact, that it actually appeared that the Canucks lowered ticket prices. Remember, we were talking about that. They lowered the ticket prices kind of heading into the season, from what they were charging for single game buyers over the summer. So I think that's definitely at play. Like when we looked at the prices in the summer, you could not buy a single game ticket for under $100. I had a look this morning. You can buy a ticket to tonight's game on the resale market for $67. I had a friend tell me that he saw tickets for $50 for Tuesday's game. So, I think you can see a little bit on the resale market that the ticket prices start to drop. You can see, I don't know how they feel, like maybe it was some latecomers to last game, but or maybe these are these last minute student prices where, you're getting people coming into the game late. I'm not sure what it is, but it definitely feels when you look in the crowd that there are a few more empty seats than you would expect after a great season last year.
Yeah, and they're advertising tickets available for just about every game, so that's a
I'm on the site right now. There's a lot of blue on Ticketmaster. The blue dots are available.
The
tickets.
one thing I'll say is we're always taught don't start looking at attendance until you're a significant way into the game, because there are late arrivals, and we know this is Vancouver, and there are going to be late arrivals. So
But these days, this day and age, if you can get into an NHL game for under $100, you're doing well.
No, that's
you're
it.
Doing well.
The other thing that I think we need to be a little bit careful with, I do think Rob hits on the most salient point in terms of how these tickets are priced. But I think there are other factors at play as well, including economic factors. Yep. The other thing is, and our old friend Big Daddy Pratt used to talk about this. People now invest in home theaters or home AV setups that are extraordinary. My brother said it to me the other day. He loves Lumen. He loves going down to Seahawks games. We talked about going to the one on the 23rd against Minnesota, and he said to me, not our team. And to sit for 3.5 hours in the pouring rain, potentially. Obviously, Rogers Arena, you don't sit in the pouring rain, but just extracting that person from their home setup with all the money that they've put in there, where the beer is cheap, where the bathroom's nearby, where the screen is loud and the sound is surround. That's becoming increasingly difficult for sports operators.
Not going anywhere is also way easier than going somewhere. It's way
easier. And the other thing is, when people are going places now, they want it to be experiential. Like, they want an experience, and there are 41 of these, right? A lot of them are quite similar. Rob, pick up. You think other things are involved here, and did we miss anything?
Yeah, I mean, you could say this. You could say that for many years now, where people like to stay at home, but people like going places. They want to, they want to be sitting in the arena and snap a picture and post on Instagram to brag to their friends that they're at the hockey game. I think people definitely want to go out and want to have that feeling that you get when you're at a sporting event. I don't think that that's necessarily going away. I think to me, it's the prices. It's absolutely the prices, and you can't just jack up the prices to whatever number you see fit and just continue to have tickets fly off the shelves. Now, it should also be said, guys, like I had a look at the final attendance numbers. I don't know what, if there's any auditing on these numbers, but they do always seem like, okay, well, geez, wow, it's like 99% filled at Rogers Arena yet again. Maybe the tickets were distributed or sold and people didn't show up for their seats. Strikes me as a little bit unusual. It doesn't seem to add up in my mind from just the eye test, from what I see in the crowd versus what you see on the game sheet afterwards.
It is remarkable when you go on to Ticketmaster for tonight's game. So there's a ton of blue, which is Ticketmaster available tickets. And the red, of course, is the resell market on Ticketmaster. You can resell your ticket on. I mean, there's a lot of tickets available. So there's a lot of people that have bought tickets for this game that aren't necessarily committed to going to this game. And this isn't Taylor Swift. Like, nobody's putting their tickets back for sale on Ticketmaster expecting to make a ton of money here. There's 41 dates from which to sell. So it just, I look at this map, Rob, and I see a market that isn't demanding to go to these games right now.
Yeah, and the home record's part of it, right? Like, there just hasn't been that many good times at Rogers Arena this season. Like, if again, like we were talking about before, if you're missing those moments, you're missing that energy, you're missing that vibe of people saying like, geez, that last night's game, it was unbelievable. Yeah. I think that it makes the regular season a little bit more blasé, and people are maybe not a little slower to maybe jump on the bandwagon. That
anecdotal word of mouth of, we went to the Canucks game the other day, it was amazing. When without that happening and kind of going viral, it reduces the excitement.
The other thing I will say is they got to the playoffs last year for the first time in 9 years at home, remember, because of the playoff bubble that nobody got to experience here on the ground. I think that has, for starters, that completely changed the equation heading into the season, because I would argue that there was more sort of excitement and electricity going into some of those seasons in the intervening 9 years when people were fueled with hope and optimism. Some would argue mistakenly. Well, as it turned out, mistakenly. But this year, I sensed an overwhelming, we're a good team now. Can we start the playoffs already? Vibe. And I do wonder, whether people are waiting to shoot their shot come the Stanley Cup playoffs and don't necessarily have the same enthusiasm and gusto
maybe
for early season, regular season hockey. We shall see. Rob, before we leave you here, I want to chit-chat about Rick Tocchet in the media landscape here. Heard Thomas Drance's rant about how this is the softest media environment that any Canucks team has ever had to endure. I agree wholeheartedly when he's talking about traditional media. There is this whole social media phenomenon, which I think also has to be considered into the equation. You know, for me, and I think for coaches, it's simple. Just don't go on social
traditional media. You can't avoid, because they are there. If they attend, they are there.
But the social media side of things,
that's voluntary.
Well, it is voluntary, except for these young kids, Blake, for whom this is life, right? Like you do this, you do that, you check your phone, Instagram, and all your social media apps. Like, yeah, for me, just if you're a player who feels like the market, the fan base, the media is being too harsh on you, if that gets you down, if that affects your mental health, your outlook, your whatever, it's as simple as just don't go on those apps. And yet I wonder if that's easier said than done with some of these younger players who grew up in this generation. You know, going on Instagram is as normal and routine for them as turning on the television or radio would have been for us.
There are certain things that you commit to when you're a professional hockey player. You don't get to go to McDonald's every day. And so guess what? They don't go to McDonald's every day like some teens do. There are things that you just can't do. One of those things is be a complete addict to social media, because it'll have the same effect as going to McDonald's every day, effectively.
Rob, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, part of the problem, I totally agree. Like Drance's rant was awesome, and I agree in a lot of respects. Like, it's, you've got players that, I'm not sure how much fans know, I guess, about how it works after a game. It used to be like when I first started going, as media to Canucks games, you'd go into the room after a game and there'd be tons of players in there. Like most of the players, they're still getting their they're still getting their gear off and that sort of thing.
16 of 23 players would be in the room, yes.
And you could walk up to anyone you like, and typically what would happen is everyone crowds around Henrik Sedin, the captain, after every single game, and he speaks, and then people filter off and go to different players, and you can kind of just go around to whoever you want to now. The environment today is quite different. When I walked into the room on Tuesday, there's one player in the room. It's Thatcher Demko, and he's standing at the front, and he's ready to answer questions to a giant media horde. So everyone asks one player all the questions, and then Demko leaves, and then another player comes in, and you typically get 3 players, sometimes 4 players after a game. That's a typical environment after a game now. So it's quite different than what it used to be. So in effect, you have some players that, I mean, I don't know if I've ever talked to Philip Hronek or seen him in person.
I know.
And that just shows, that's the extreme example, right? Like where you don't actually have to face the media for days, weeks at a time for some players. Now the star players do get, they have to come out and do that, but that's, it's quite a different environment. And of course, as Drance pointed out, on the road, there's very few outlets now that send their reporters on the road. So there's not the questions that you get after half of your home games. But the flip side of all of this is social media. And even if you stay off social media, maybe your buddy is sending you something, you hear about it from someone. Did you hear about this person said that or whatever? So I think that in some ways you're kind of always in the public eye. There's, go back to the 90s, there was one insider, right? It was Bob McKenzie. Now, how many insiders do we have that are breaking things and they go viral, right? So it's quite a bit different, I think, than how it used to be.
Well, and I'll say this: the NHL and its member clubs don't understand marketing. They particularly don't understand personality-driven marketing, which is where the NBA has so excelled for decades, and marketing in the digital age as well. So, for me, this sport has plateaued in terms of its popularity in the United States and Canada. It's never going to get any bigger without a significant
Every other league is trying to have more exposure. The NHL is trying to have less.
Exactly. And it's not going to change until you have a new commissioner who starts talking to these teams in a different manner. Gary wants to govern at large, and I get it, but I think if you're going to take the next step, you're going to have a stronger-willed commissioner when it comes to getting some of these teams and players out of their comfort zone and understanding that it's the players and personalities that are your best asset when marketing and communicating to a greater public at large. Rob, great stuff. Thank you for the time, sir. We'll catch up next week.
Sounds great.